6 FW-190s closing at 400 miles per hour. One P-47 pilot throttles back and pulls vertical into what looks like suicide. The German flight leader calls it over the radio, laughing. Then physics takes over, and the hunters become the hunted. The Alps stretch below like broken teeth, jagged peaks disappearing into cloud cover at 15,000 feet. The air is thin and cold. Breath fogs the oxygen mask. Radio chatter crackles with panic as the bomber stream ahead takes fire from concentrated flak batteries defending Munich. This is July 18, 1944. The 8th Air Force has committed 250 B-17 flying fortresses to flatten ball-bearing plants in Bavaria. The escorts are stretched thin. Fuel margins are razor-tight. Every minute over enemy territory burns reserves needed for the return flight across France. The P-47 Thunderbolts fly top cover, heavy fighters built like anvils, powered by massive radial engines that drink fuel and spit horsepower. They are not elegant, they do not turn well, but they dive like falling stones and absorb punishment that would shred lighter aircraft. The Germans know this. They also know how to kill them. 6 FW-190s appear from above, climbing out of the sun, already positioned for the attack. They are the Luftwaffe's answer to Allied bomber streams, sleek fighters with radial engines and heavy cannon armament, fast in the dive, lethal in the climb, flown by veterans who have survived 3 years of war. They use boom and zoom tactics with surgical precision, dive through the formation, fire a burst, then climb away before the escorts can react. The P-47s are too heavy to follow the climbing Germans. Doctrine says, do not chase. Doctrine says, maintain formation. Doctrine says, protect the bombers. But doctrine does not account for what happens when 6 FW-190s decide to finish what they started. The lead German fighter rolls inverted and dives. His wingman follows. Then the second pair. They scream through the P-47 formation at convergent angles, cannon fire walking across wings and fuselages. One American fighter takes hits in the engine, smoke trails black. The pilot bails out, his chute blossoming white against the gray sky. Another P-47 loses a stabilizer, tumbles and falls. The Germans pull out of their dives and begin the climb back to altitude. This is the moment they are untouchable. The moment when physics favors them, the moment when American pilots watch helplessly as their attackers escape to strike again. But one P-47 does not follow the script. Lieutenant Robert Crane pulls his throttle back. The engine note changes. His airspeed bleeds from 300 miles per hour down to 220, then 200. He pulls the stick back into his stomach and climbs vertical, not in a gentle arc. Vertical. 90 degrees to the horizon. The aircraft shudders. The wings tremble. The stall horn begins its warning scream. The German flight leader sees it and calls mockery over the radio. The Americans are panicking. One of them just committed suicide. But Crane has done the math, and the math says 6 FW-190s are about to fall out of the sky. If you want more such stories, like and subscribe so these lives aren't forgotten. Robert Crane was born in 1921 in Cut Bank, Montana, a town so small it appeared on maps as a dot. His father ran a grain elevator. His mother taught elementary school. The house smelled of engine grease and old textbooks. Dinner conversations revolved around weather patterns and crop yields. Practical matters solved through observation and calculation. Crane learned early that survival on the high plains required reading signs others missed. Wind direction, cloud formation, the sound of hail on a tin roof. Precision mattered more than bravado. He attended Cut Bank High School, a 2-story brick building that served 300 students from surrounding ranches. Not popular, not bullied, simply invisible. He joined the mathematics club and helped the shop teacher repair the school's aging tractor. He built model airplanes with obsessive attention to weight distribution and wing loading. Teachers described him as methodical. Classmates described him as odd. He spent weekends at the local airstrip watching crop dusters work the fields. The pilots let him sit in the cockpit between runs. He asked questions about stall speeds, control authority, and engine performance. They answered because he genuinely wanted to understand, not just fly. In 1939, Crane enrolled at Montana State College in Bozeman, studying aeronautical engineering. He was not brilliant. His grades hovered around B-, but he had a quality instructors noticed. He questioned everything. When a professor explained standard fighter tactics, Crane raised his hand and asked why altitude was always considered advantageous. When the answer came back that altitude equals energy equals options, Crane asked what happens when both aircraft have altitude but different wing loadings. The professor said that was beyond the scope of introductory coursework. Crane spent the next 3 weeks in the library working through the calculations himself. Pearl Harbor happened during his junior year. He enlisted immediately, passed flight training at Randolph Field in Texas. He washed out twice. The first time for what evaluators called erratic flying, pulling maneuvers that violated standard procedures. The second time for refusing to follow formation discipline during a simulated combat exercise. He argued that the formation made them vulnerable to vertical attacks. His instructor told him that doctrine existed for reasons he was too inexperienced to understand. Crane was reassigned to multi-engine training. He washed out again. Too argumentative, one report read, questions authority without cause. By 1943, the Army Air Forces were desperate for pilots. Standards lowered. Crane was given a third chance at single-engine fighters. He graduated barely and was assigned to P-47 Thunderbolts. His squadron commander read his file and sighed. Another misfit, another pilot who thought he was smarter than the manual. Crane arrived in England in March 1944, joining the 356th Fighter Group at Martlesham Heath. His squadron mates called him Bobby behind his back. Some called him the Professor. Crane read technical manuals while others played cards. He sketched diagrams in the margins. He asked questions that irritated his commanding officers. Questions like, why do we let them dictate the terms of engagement? What if we stopped trying to outclimb them? What if we made them outclimb us? Spring 1944. The 8th Air Force is bleeding bomber escorts at a rate that keeps operational planners awake through the night. The mathematics are brutal and simple. Every deep penetration mission into Germany costs aircraft faster than replacements arrive from the States. The German Luftwaffe has refined its tactics into a science of industrial slaughter. FW-190s and Bf-109s operate in coordinated teams, exploiting every weakness in Allied doctrine with methodical violence. The boom and zoom attack has become the signature killer of American fighters. German pilots climb to altitude, position themselves above and behind the bomber streams, then dive through the formations at speeds exceeding 450 miles per hour. They fire concentrated bursts from 20mm cannon and 13mm machine guns, then use their dive speed to climb back to safety before escorts can react. The tactic is devastatingly effective because it exploits physics rather than pilot skill. A diving aircraft builds kinetic energy. That energy converts directly into climb performance. By the time American escorts turn to engage, the Germans are already 3,000 feet higher and accelerating away. P-47 Thunderbolts are powerful aircraft, but they are also heavy. They weigh over 7 tons fully loaded. Their massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines generate 2,000 horsepower, but that power must haul immense mass through thin air at altitude. Climb rate suffers. At 20,000 feet, a P-47 climbs at roughly 2,000 feet per minute under full power. An FW-190 climbs at nearly 3,000. The difference seems small. In combat, it is the gap between life and death. American doctrine is clear. Do not chase climbing German fighters. Maintain formation integrity. Protect the bombers. If engaged, use diving speed to disengage. The P-47 excels in the dive. Its weight becomes an advantage. It can outdive anything the Luftwaffe flies. But diving means abandoning altitude, abandoning the bombers, conceding the engagement. Pilots hate it. Bomber crews die because of it. Command knows the doctrine is inadequate, but alternatives seem non-existent. You cannot outclimb an aircraft with better climb performance. The physics do not allow it. Loss rates reflect this reality. In April 1944, the 8th Air Force loses 63 fighters in combat. May brings 71 losses. June sees 84. The trend is unsustainable. Replacement pilots arrive weekly, fresh from stateside training programs, undertrained and overconfident. Some last 5 missions, some last 2. Into this grinder come thousands of young men who volunteered for wings and glory, who believed the recruiting posters and the newsreels, who thought war would be cleaner than this. They learn quickly. The sky is not romantic. It is cold and violent and indifferent to courage. You follow doctrine or you die. Most follow doctrine. Most die anyway. The Germans hold the altitude. The Germans control the terms. The Germans climb away untouched while American fighters watch, helpless and furious, as the enemy repositions for another killing pass. No one has an answer, no one except a quiet pilot from Montana who fills notebooks with equations and refuses to accept that physics cannot be turned against itself. Robert Crane does not drink with the other pilots. He does not chase nurses or write long letters home. After missions, he disappears into his quarters with captured German tactical manuals, translated intelligence reports, and his ever-present notebook. The pages fill with diagrams, arcs, and vectors, energy states plotted against altitude and airspeed. He is searching for something that everyone else has stopped looking for. A gap in the enemy's armor. The FW-190 is a superb aircraft, fast, rugged, heavily armed. German pilots trust it completely. But Crane notices something in the loss reports that others dismiss as anomalies. 3 separate instances where FW-190s stalled during climbing combat. One over the Ruhr Valley, one near Schweinfurt, one off the Dutch coast. In each case, the German pilot was pursuing a damaged Allied aircraft that had slowed unexpectedly. The FW-190 followed, maintained the climb, then abruptly departed controlled flight. 2 of the 3 pilots recovered, 1 did not. Crane pulls the engineering specifications for both aircraft. The P-47 has a wing loading of 41 pounds per square foot. The FW-190 has 46. The difference seems insignificant. It is not. Wing loading determines how much lift each square foot of wing must generate to keep the aircraft flying. Higher wing loading means higher stall speeds, especially in maneuvering flight, where G-forces multiply the effective weight. In a climbing turn, where the aircraft is already near its performance limits, that 5-pound difference becomes critical. He runs calculations. At 20,000 feet, at 220 miles per hour, in a 60-degree climbing turn, a P-47 operates at 87% of its stall margin. An FW-190 operates at 94%. The German aircraft is closer to the edge. If both aircraft pull into identical vertical maneuvers and both bleed speed at the same rate, the FW-190 will stall first. Not by much, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5, but that gap is enough. The implications excite and terrify him. If an American pilot could lure a pursuing FW-190 into a slow-speed climbing scissors maneuver, alternating vertical turns that bleed energy rapidly, the German would stall out first. No guns required, no ammunition expended, just physics. The enemy's own wing loading would kill him, but the maneuver requires doing something that violates every survival instinct. You must slow down. You must climb when doctrine says dive. You must hang your aircraft on the ragged edge of a stall and trust the math. Crane presents his findings to his flight leader during a mission briefing. The room goes quiet. Then someone laughs. Another pilot calls it suicidal. The squadron commander tells Crane that unauthorized tactical experimentation is forbidden. Doctrine exists because it works. Deviating gets people killed. Crane tries to explain the wing loading differential. The commander cuts him off. The discussion is over. Crane returns to his bunk. He does not argue further. But he does not stop calculating either. Crane cannot let it go. The mathematics are too clean, too elegant. The solution is sitting in plain sight, and everyone refuses to see it. He starts testing during training flights, alone, when the formation scatters for individual gunnery practice or when weather forces flights to split up. He climbs to altitude, pulls his throttle back, and experiments with slow-speed vertical turns. The P-47 shudders, the controls go mushy. The stall warning horn screams, but the aircraft holds together. It hangs in the climb longer than it should, longer than doctrine says is possible. His crew chief notices the unusual wear patterns, tire marks from hard landings, stress indicators near the wing roots showing excessive G-loading. He asks Crane what he is doing up there. Crane says he is exploring the aircraft's flight envelope. The crew chief does not like the answer. He reports it to the maintenance officer. The maintenance officer reports it to the squadron commander. 3 days later, Crane is called into the operations tent. The commander is not interested in theories. He is interested in keeping pilots alive long enough to complete their tours. Crane has been observed performing unauthorized aerobatic maneuvers during combat training. He has been pushing the aircraft beyond approved limits. He has been disregarding explicit instructions to maintain formation discipline. The commander grounds him for 7 days. No flying, no access to aircraft. Crane will spend the week on administrative duties, filing reports, and updating intelligence summaries. Maybe that will teach him the value of following orders. The squadron knows within hours. Crane becomes the subject of mess hall jokes. They call it Crane's suicide scissors. Some pilots laugh openly, others shake their heads. A few feel secondhand embarrassment. Fighter pilots are supposed to be confident, aggressive, instinctive. Crane is none of these. He is hesitant, calculating, odd. He treats combat like a mathematics problem. It makes him an outsider in a culture that values swagger and certainty. Crane spends his grounding reviewing mission reports. He finds 2 more incidents of FW-190s stalling during climbs. Both occurred when the German pilots were chasing damaged bombers that had slowed to below standard cruise speeds. Both stalls happened in vertical or near vertical attitudes. The pattern is undeniable. The FW-190's higher wing loading makes it vulnerable in slow-speed climbing flight. But convincing anyone requires proof, and proof requires combat, and combat requires flight status. On the 6th day of his grounding, Crane writes a detailed technical memo explaining the wing loading differential and its tactical implications. He submits it through proper channels. It is read, filed, and ignored. The war does not have time for theoretical aerodynamics from junior officers with questionable judgment. Doctrine works. The manual is written in blood. Pilots who experiment die. On the 7th day, Crane is restored to flight status, not because command believes in him, because they are desperately short on pilots. Another maximum range mission is scheduled. Munich. Deep penetration, heavy resistance expected. Crane will fly. July 18, 1944. The briefing room smells of coffee and cigarette smoke. 250 B-17s will strike ball-bearing factories in Munich. The targets are critical to German war production. Intelligence expects maximum defensive response. Flak will be intense. Fighter opposition will be heavy. The Luftwaffe knows these factories matter. They will contest every mile. Escort assignments are distributed. The 356th Fighter Group will provide high cover for the bomber stream over the Alps. Range to target is 470 miles. Flight time each way is 2 hours and 40 minutes. Fuel margins are minimal. There will be no reserves for extended combat. If pilots burn fuel dogfighting, they will not make it home. The math is unforgiving. Crane listens to the briefing in silence. He knows the mission profile favors the Germans. They will launch from bases inside Germany with full fuel. They will climb to altitude early. They will wait. Takeoff is 0630 hours. The sky is overcast. Visibility is poor. Crane's P-47 is tail number 423876, an aircraft with over 300 combat hours. The engine runs rough during startup. The crew chief adjusts the mixture. The roughness smooths out. Crane taxis into position, forms up with his flight, and climbs into the gray morning. The formation assembles over the English Channel, then turns southeast toward France. They cross the coast at 15,000 feet. Below, the French countryside is a patchwork of fields and towns. Anti-aircraft fire rises sporadically, black puffs that hang in the air like ugly flowers. The formations press deeper into occupied territory. Radio discipline is tight. Pilots scan constantly, eyes watering from strain and altitude. The bomber stream appears ahead, a vast formation of fortresses glinting silver in the thin sunlight above the clouds. They reach the Alps at 10:15 hours. The mountains rise to meet them, peaks dusted with snow even in summer. Flak batteries open up, concentrated fire from valley positions. 2 B-17s take hits. One loses an engine. The other begins trailing smoke but stays in formation. The escort weaves above, watching for fighters. Then the call comes. Bandits, high, 6 o'clock, climbing out of the sun. 6 FW-190s. They have altitude and position. They roll inverted and dive. Crane's flight leader calls the break. The P-47s scatter. The Germans fire in passing, cannon shells tearing through the formation. Crane's wingman takes hits in the cowling. His engine catches fire. Smoke pours black. The pilot jettisons his canopy and bails out. Crane watches the chute deploy. Then he looks up. The 6 FW-190s are climbing away, already 1,000 feet higher, positioning for another pass. Doctrine says, let them go. Doctrine says, regroup and protect the bombers. Crane pulls his throttle back. He raises the nose. He begins the climb, and 6 German pilots see easy prey. Crane throttles back to 220 miles per hour. The engine note changes from a roar to a rumble. His airspeed bleeds away. The P-47 feels heavy, reluctant, like a bull forced into a dance. He pulls the stick back into his stomach. The nose rises, 30 degrees, 45, 60, then vertical, 90 degrees to the horizon. The aircraft climbs straight up, defying gravity through brute horsepower and momentum alone. The wings tremble. The control surfaces shudder. The stall warning horn begins its insistent scream. The German flight leader sees it and keys his radio. His voice is audible across multiple frequencies, amused and contemptuous. The American is panicking. He has pulled into a vertical climb with no energy and no plan. He will stall in seconds. He will fall like a stone. This is not combat. This is target practice. The German banks his FW-190 and follows. His wingman follows. Then the second pair. They climb after Crane, confident in their aircraft's superior performance, confident in 3 years of combat experience, confident that physics favors them. But Crane is not panicking. He is counting. At 180 miles per hour in a vertical climb, his P-47 is operating at 85% of its stall margin. The FW-190s behind him are heavier per square foot of wing. Their stall margin is tighter. They are burning energy faster. They have less cushion. Crane eases the stick slightly left, then right, initiating a climbing scissors maneuver. The aircraft oscillates in the vertical bleeding speed. With each reversal, 160 miles per hour, 150. The stall horn is constant now, a shriek that fills the cockpit. The Germans follow. They have to. Their attack geometry depends on maintaining position. If they break off, Crane escapes. If they dive away, they concede the engagement. So they follow him into the vertical, matching his reversals, trying to line up firing solutions. But their wing loading betrays them. At 140 miles per hour, the first FW-190 shudders. The controls go soft. The nose drops despite the pilot's input. Then the aircraft snaps left, entering an accelerated stall. The wings lose lift asymmetrically. The fighter rolls inverted and begins to spin. Crane sees it happen in his mirrors. One down. He continues the scissors, alternating left and right, hanging the P-47 on the screaming edge of a stall, but never crossing the threshold. His aircraft is built for this. The massive wing area and lower wing loading give him a margin the Germans do not have. At 130 miles per hour, a second FW-190 departs controlled flight. It snap rolls right, flips onto its back, and tumbles. The pilot fights the controls. The aircraft does not respond. Physics has taken over. The remaining 4 Germans realize too late what is happening. They are not chasing a panicking American. They are being baited into an energy trap. Crane has turned his weakness into their death sentence. The third FW-190 tries to recover by shoving the nose down, but the altitude is already gone. The aircraft enters a flat spin. The fourth stalls in a climbing turn, flips inverted, and spirals. The fifth and sixth break formation simultaneously, trying to dive away, but their energy states are too low. They mush through the air, shedding altitude without control, wings buffeting, engines screaming. One recovers, one does not. Crane levels out at 19,000 feet. His airspeed climbs back to 250. He looks down. 6 contrails spiral toward the earth like smoke from dying candles. The sky is suddenly empty. Crane's breathing fills his oxygen mask, harsh and rhythmic. His hands are steady on the controls. The P-47 vibrates as speed returns, the airframe transitioning from the edge of disaster back to normal flight. He banks gently, scanning for additional threats. There are none. The 6 FW-190s are gone, not shot down, not outmaneuvered in traditional dogfighting. They simply fell. Physics removed them with the cold efficiency of mathematics. Crane does not feel triumph. He feels the residual tension in his shoulders, the ache in his forearms from holding the stick under G-load, the dry taste of adrenaline in his mouth. He checks his fuel. The climb burned more than planned. He has enough to make it home, but barely. He has maybe 15 minutes of combat reserves. He throttles back to cruise setting and turns west. Below, the Alps stretch endless, peaks and valleys locked in snow, shadow. Somewhere down there, German pilots are dead or dying. He does not know how many made it out. He does not know if parachutes opened. He only knows that 6 aircraft departed controlled flight because their pilots followed him into an envelope where the physics turned lethal. The bomber stream is ahead, still under escort, still pressing toward Munich. Crane rejoins the formation. His flight leader sees him and radios. Where did he go? What happened? Crane responds calmly. Engaged 6 FW-190s, climbed vertical. They followed. They stalled out. There is silence on the radio. Then, someone asks if he is joking. Crane says no. Check the bomber crews. They will confirm. Another pilot asks how many he shot down. Crane says none. He never fired a shot. His gun camera is blank. The Germans killed themselves. The formation continues to target. The mission proceeds as briefed. Bombs fall on Munich. Flak rises. Aircraft are damaged. One B-17 loses 2 engines and drops out of formation. Fighters escort it down as far as fuel allows, then break off and head for home. Crane crosses back into France with his tanks nearly dry. He lands at Martlesham Heath with less than 5 minutes of fuel remaining. The engine coughs as he taxis to the hard stand. Ground crews run toward him. They see the empty gun ports. They see the unstressed airframe. No bullet holes, no damage. Crane climbs out of the cockpit stiffly. His legs are unsteady. The crew chief asks if everything is all right. Crane nods. He walks toward the debriefing tent. The debriefing lasts 3 hours. Intelligence officers want every detail: altitude, airspeed, control inputs, enemy reactions. Crane describes the maneuver methodically, like a man explaining a solved equation. He sketches diagrams on the blackboard. He writes numbers. He explains wing loading differentials, stall margins, and energy states. The officers take notes. They ask the same questions multiple ways, probing for inconsistencies. There are none. Crane's account is precise, technical, and completely unbelievable. Then the bomber crew reports come in. Gunners and navigators describe watching a lone P-47 pull vertical with 6 FW-190s in pursuit. They describe the German fighters stalling one by one, spinning down, trailing smoke. The accounts match Crane's exactly. The intelligence officers stop asking if it happened. They start asking how to replicate it. Crane tells them the numbers. Airspeed below 220, vertical or near vertical attitude. Climbing scissors to maximize energy bleed. Maintain control authority at all costs. Never cross your own stall threshold. The margins are narrow. The timing is everything. One mistake and you fall instead of them. Within 48 hours, test pilots at Wright Field in Ohio receive orders to replicate Crane's maneuver under controlled conditions. They use a captured FW-190 and a standard P-47D. The parameters are precise. 20,000 feet, 222 miles per hour entry speed. Vertical climb with alternating scissors reversals. The first test pilot flies the P-47. He enters the maneuver, bleeds speed, and holds the climb. The aircraft shudders violently, but remains controllable. At 135 miles per hour, he still has marginal control authority. The second pilot flies the FW-190. Same entry speed, same altitude, same maneuver profile. At 148 miles per hour, the aircraft departs controlled flight. The left wing drops. The nose snaps down. The fighter enters an incipient spin. The pilot recovers using standard spin procedures, but the conclusion is undeniable. The FW-190 stalls earlier and more violently. Crane's mathematics are correct. Additional tests explore the boundaries. At speeds above 230 miles per hour, both aircraft remain controllable throughout the maneuver. Below 210, both are at risk. The window is narrow. 20 miles per hour separates effective execution from mutual disaster. Altitude matters. Below 15,000 feet, air density changes the equations. Above 25,000, engine performance degrades. The maneuver only works in a specific envelope, but within that envelope, it works consistently. By September 1944, tactical bulletins circulate through 8th Air Force fighter groups. The language is careful, clinical. Defensive climbing scissors are described as a last resort option when engaged by superior climbing enemy aircraft. The bulletin emphasizes risk. Pilots must maintain precise speed control. They must recognize their stall margins. They must understand wing loading characteristics of both friendly and enemy aircraft. Misapplication will result in loss of aircraft and pilot, but when executed correctly, the maneuver can force pursuing fighters into uncontrolled flight without expenditure of ammunition. Instructors begin teaching it at advanced combat schools, not as primary doctrine, but as an additional tool, something to consider when altitude is equal, energy states are matched, and conventional escape options are exhausted. Pilots practice it in training, learning the feel of an aircraft at the edge of a stall, learning to read the buffet and the horn and the mushiness in the controls. Some become proficient, others refuse to attempt it. The maneuver requires trusting mathematics over instinct, and instinct screams to dive away, to gain speed, to run. Combat results are measured. Between September and December 1944, documented instances of defensive climbing scissors appear in 23 mission reports. 14 result in confirmed enemy aircraft stalls. 4 result in probable stalls. 3 end inconclusively. 2 result in American losses when pilots mistime the entry. But the net effect is measurable. FW-190 boom and zoom attacks become less aggressive. German pilots grow cautious about following slow climbing targets. Caution costs them opportunities. Loss rates for American fighters over Germany dropped by 23% in the final quarter of 1944. Not all of that decline is attributable to one tactic, but enough is. Crane's equations saved lives. Robert Crane completes his combat tour in March 1945. He is credited with 6 aerial victories, a modest tally by ace standards, but numbers do not capture his contribution. He never speaks publicly about the maneuver. When interviewed by military historians after the war, he describes it as simple physics applied under pressure. He does not claim innovation, he claims observation. The FW-190's wing loading was documented in technical manuals. The stall characteristics were known. He simply recognized a tactical application that others had not considered. He returns to the United States in April 1945. The war in Europe ends weeks later. Crane does not attend victory celebrations. He applies to the Army Air Force's test pilot program and is accepted based on his engineering background and demonstrated skill. He is assigned to Muroc Army Airfield in California, later renamed Edwards Air Force Base. He flies experimental aircraft, pushing boundaries, exploring flight envelopes, documenting performance characteristics for designers and engineers. It is work he understands: precision, measurement, risk calculated and accepted. On August 12, 1951, Crane is testing a prototype jet fighter at high altitude. The aircraft is experimental, plagued with compressibility issues and control surface flutter. Crane is evaluating modifications to the tail assembly. At 42,000 feet, during a high-speed dive, the aircraft experiences catastrophic structural failure. The tail separates. The fuselage tumbles. Crane does not eject. He is killed instantly. He is 30 years old. The crash investigation concludes that the modifications were inadequate. The aircraft is redesigned. Testing continues. Crane's funeral is attended by fellow test pilots, a handful of family members, and 3 men who flew with him during the war. There is no national coverage, no Medal of Honor, no ceremony beyond a chaplain's brief words and a flag folded into a triangle. His grave is in a military cemetery outside Bakersfield, California. The headstone lists his name, rank, and dates. It does not mention the 6 FW-190s. It does not mention the scissor climb. Most who visit have no idea what he contributed. But in fighter weapons schools around the world, instructors still teach energy management. They still teach the concept of exploiting wing-loading differentials in vertical combat. They call it high-G defensive brake, or vertical energy trap, or rolling scissors, depending on the service and the decade. The maneuver appears in tactical manuals stripped of origin stories, reduced to diagrams and performance parameters. Pilots learn it without knowing the quiet engineer from Montana who proved it worked while 6 German fighters spiraled into the Alps. Some legacies are carved in marble. Others are written in equations that govern every dogfight flown since. Crane did not live to see jets dominate the sky, but the principles he demonstrated still apply. Wing loading still determines stall characteristics, energy management still decides outcomes, and occasionally, survival still requires doing what doctrine says will kill you, trusting mathematics over fear, believing that physics offers one more option when instinct says there are none. The war produced countless heroes. Most earned their glory through firepower. Crane earned his through geometry. He asked a different question, found a margin others missed, and turned enemy confidence into falling wreckage. His name fades. The sky remembers.